Well, the deception seemed to have worked. Passive monitoring stations were set up immediately to check every single sector that humanity even knew about. This will give them ample warning just in case something does go bad. But for the moment, seems like the plan went off flawlessly, and time is now on humanity's side. Around Zoro 2, the dissection and salvage of the now destroyed Harvester continues like clockwork. As the Harvester slowly shrinks, other devices begin to take its place. In particular, a space station / spaceport is constructed, allowing the Foxy folks to actually produce ships that go all the way up through cruiser level. The spaceport that was lone created the pieces needed to actually create the station itself. Once that's done, they use the material to build the ships that can transport all the way to the surface. It is of note that most humans that are working around that area will actually fight for any job that will send them to the surface of Zero 2, even to the point of underbidding on a contract or even offering to do the job pro bono, just to spend some time on the surface of this planet. After hearing about it, even Bill thought about leaving Earth for a while just to check it out. Everybody heard and saw a video of the natural hot springs of the planet that surprised everybody that they were even there, considering that there hasn't been any seismic activity on this planet in centuries, perhaps a millennia. The old school buildings that were around just worked together with the striking colors of the flora, the pleasant and attractive company that is down on the planet, all made this a true paradise world for anyone who visited. Even Hank, who had argued against it for a decade, opens his eyes to the idea of tourism on his own planet. He spoke with Bill directly about this, of course, and aired his concerns. The concerns of things like intoxicated humans, high amounts of traffic cluttering up the skies on his planet, and of course, cluttering up the streets. Humans and crew species not respecting the local cultures, the standard of anybody who is thinking about welcoming a new species on their planet. The list of concerns is valid, however, Bill has a simple solution. The solutions are limit the tourist areas and limit the number that can arrive. Along with that, hire some humans and AI as security. Utilizing the information net, anyone who acts poorly while they're there, without apologizing and of course paying for the mess, can be publicly shamed and blocked from ever returning. Also, you can block other people that are attached to this person, which is going to definitely make people want to stay on their toes and mind their manners. If this doesn't halt humans from acting poorly, simply halt all tourism and call out these particular humans, and that way everyone will realize you're not joking. Hank thought about it for several days, came back and said how much he liked the idea, but it will have to wait. At the moment, there's too much manpower, or in this case, Foxy power, and resources going up to shoring up the defenses. Yet the tourist idea is not the only one to look forward to. Once the defenses are set up, they had plans on terraforming and colonizing the third planet in their own sector. When looking at this new planet, one can see that it's a completely dead world, similar to the way Mars was before all the dumping started. It will be clear, even with all the new construction, that the Foxy personnel would actually have to rent out one of the terraforming ships, possibly two, and it would take some time, a long time, for them to make that planet very similar to their homeworld, but it is something to look forward to. Looking back towards Seoul, as far as Bill's space docks, both of them are concerned, it's still going to take a long time to build. The reason is simple. Everyone's building up, and resources to build with are getting strained, to say the least. Even with Cindy's help, the construction is very, very slow, because she is only one ship after all. Things eventually get so slow that Bill has to make a choice. A choice of which of the two space docks to focus on and finish first. Not being a complete and total idiot, He opted to finish the space dock that would build logistical ships like the big-ass cargo haulers, more complex drones, and anything else needed to aid in logistics. And of course, the more you can do, the more you make. Even with his positives, it takes so long that Bill will actually sometimes stand on the observation deck of his ship and just look at the construction, looking how long it's taking, as though staring at the construction is going to make everything move faster somehow. More than once, Aya worries and will try to pull his mind away by arriving in one of her sheer dresses, the ones that accentuate her marvelous figure. Get his attention by saying, "Do you like this dress?" Bill usually would take a few seconds to turn, look her up and down, and go, "I sure do, but I prefer the green better." She would always smile and almost giggle at this point, saying, "You always do, but if you want to play dirty old man, follow me." Most of the time, just after saying this, she would turn and let the material fall off her body and land on the decking plate. Note that sometimes they may or may not actually reach their quarters at this point. And if anybody walked in, they would simply say, "Sir, can you sign here for a second?" And he would sign while still trying to keep his rhythm, of course. Even with this wonderful distraction, Bill has a feeling in his gut. That old feeling that he tries to bury in time. A feeling that just refuses to die, refuses to stay buried. That feeling that something's coming. Once again, Bill was standing on the observation deck watching Cindy's ship offload another full load of materials as an alert came across his datapad. He pulled it out, flipped open the device, and his heart fell so fast that he thought for a second that it just fell out of his ass. A message was from the Y sector, and it only had one line. "They're everywhere," it said. The accompanying videos he clicked on showed a massive group of unknown ships swarming the system from several different directions. They seem to be jumping in waves from different directions, and nobody can figure out where they're actually coming from. The civilian ships all pulled back to the colony world of Y4, seeing this. The defenses had already been activated, and the defense fleet was already mobilizing. This was a wonderful showing of how professional everyone was, and how well they had prepared. Yet it appears that the Y sector is severely outnumbered. Though this is clearly a fleet of an unknown species to humanity, their tactics seem well rehearsed. All of them activating full repulsor shielding as they approach. They open their weapons ports and begin to charge their forward weapons. All human ships had already activated their shields, yet not full shields, only front shields as they faced the enemy, and simply maneuvered to protect the planet itself and the civilian ships that were retreating. This unknown enemy, without any word, opened fire, and they targeted the civilian ships between them and the planet. In a blaze, several ships are splashed as most were able to avoid the volley and keep accelerating towards the colony world as those that had splashed simply flashed, and then their existence was gone. It is of note that WISE-4 is the only colonized world in that sector at the moment. Since they still use Earth's terraforming ships, they are technically a colony. However, this periphery state is fiercely independent, even having a culture similar to that of Spartan culture, yet with certain clear changes. Still, they're not a society to be taken lightly, and thankfully the enemy didn't know this. The enemy fleet, seeming to notice the defense grid, sent out a message, and it only takes a few seconds for the AI to decipher it and read it back to them. "Rejoice, as your insignificant lives are now our property. We, the Chi-Chis, will now elevate your disgusting ways to something beautiful. You will submit to us now. Your ugly vessels will stand down and serve us. before they are dismantled to something better. Prepare your best foodstuffs, and you're beautiful to serve us upon our arrival. If you refuse, your world will be occupied, and you will only remain as long as we find you amusing or useful. Now bend over and prepare to receive." The planetary governor's aide immediately squinted, turned towards the AI, and said, "Did they really just say that last part?" The AI, standing there in her android body, smirked a little bit, turned, and said, "Well, she actually said kneel, bow, and submit to our dominance, but I figured saying it this way would make the point come across better." The response from Wise 4 was quick and simple. The response was, "Nuts!" Even though the planet is essentially surrounded at this point, no one tried to escape through the small gaps that appeared. Instead, the bows of the ships are aimed, turrets rotate into position, torpedoes and missiles are primed, point defenses are deployed, and everyone is ready for this enemy to, come on, get a little closer. Yeah, that's right, get into effective range. Even the defense satellites that went around the planet began to rotate and lock on with their main weapons, along with racks upon racks of self-propelled ordnance were just sitting there, waiting for the order. On the surface, everyone closes up whatever shop is open as large metal doors close, sealing off entire buildings. Across streets, on top of buildings, sometimes in the middle fields, weapon stations extend or open on the surface, and massive cannons rotate as they choose their target, waiting for someone, anyone, to get within effective range. With seemingly no signal, the Chi-Chis just seemingly charge in from all directions. It's as though there's no reason, no logic to their tactics. Perhaps they believe that just pointing themselves forward is enough to make the humans stand down out of fear. If that's true, then there will be no accountability for anything they do if humans just stand down, no matter how abhorrent their future actions might be. The Chi-Chi's multiple fleets enter effective range and don't even flinch as the humans fire first. The dreadnoughts above the north and south pole of the planet struck true, splashing the biggest targets they had to fire on. The resulting explosions and debris field caused havoc in the Chi-Chi ranks. The nearest ships to the explosions got knocked around by the debris. This seemed to enrage them as all the enemy ships charged forward, increasing to full speed even if that broke up their formation. Turns out, the Chi-Chis really don't like getting smacked around really hard. The enemy ships fired as they charged, yet their use of full shielding plus the high stress on the engine's use right now really cut the yield of their energy weapons down significantly. So much so that the paint on the human ships didn't even get scratched or scorched. As the enemy's multiple fleets continue to advance, the human ships begin to unload on them, utilizing mainly ballistic weapons as they can't get through those disruptor fields. They cut through the shields as though they weren't even there, especially since energy shields don't work against ballistics. Any smart captain on the enemy side immediately began evasive maneuvers. This helped against the cannon shots, but not against the guided ordnance that was coming up next. Tearing apart ships with each strike, one would think that the Chi-Chis would realize the pounding that they're taking and retreat as missiles exploded on the surface, blowing holes inside the armor, or torpedoes driving straight through and blowing up inside, cracking the back of their ship, sometimes exploding with such force that it seems as though the whole ship would roll backwards from the engines actually blowing out. But nope, they just kept moving forward, as though being squeezed hard didn't affect them at all. That is when the human defenders found out that the Chi-Chis are actually just trying to get close. They're trying to get close and get personal. Completely encapsulating the defenders and pushing in close, Though in space combat close is considered relative, the Chi-Chis turned off their shield and everybody knows what that means. As the Chi-Chi powered up their main weapons to maximum, the human commanders began to capitalize on this moment. They knew they only had a few seconds for the weapons to charge up. The defenders began utilizing their own energy weapons at this point. Energy weapons that no longer had to fight through a disruptor shield. With all the energy weapons that began to fire within those few seconds, space around WISE 4 became the universe's biggest light show. Due to this, casualties began to mount heavy on both sides. Though the human ships are clearly better and stronger in combat, it appears that the superior numbers of the Chi-Chi are going to come through. They just might win, at least until they reach the defense net. The sudden addition of several hundred defense satellites and small battle stations, with the main cannons firing and spraying a wall of torpedoes and missiles, halts the attack, even if it is for only a few minutes. Unfortunately, it does not stop the battle itself. The numbers and the higher yield weapons makes the Chi-Chi believe that they can still punch through, they can still win. As more and more human ships are disabled or destroyed, the more confident the enemy becomes, believing that they will have to take over the homeworld of this unknown species that they have found. They will be able to rule unopposed. In a massive push, the Chi-Chi set up in 3 main battle fleets. They set up in a triangular formation and move for a final push to finally destroy the defense fleet, destroy the defense network. And as they do, there's a sudden burst of energy right in between 2 of these groups, materializing out of FTL between the 2 fleets of Chi-Chis. Joe immediately aims his weapons forwards and empties an entire combat load into the face of the 3rd group. The 2 Chi-Chi fleets are so stunned at what just happens, they don't engage until they see the turrets on this new ship rotate towards them. Clouds of missiles and torpedoes exit their tubes. Secondary weapons begin to fire, and even point defense systems could engage as they are that close. This was shocking, but not nearly as shocking as warships of all sizes entering the systems from all angles. Most of these ships are of human design, even though the Chi-Chis didn't know that, though a few seem to be salvaged from species that they actually know. Regardless, the Chi-Chi forces are now afraid, as a fleet easily 3 times bigger than the planetary defense forces are showing up and continuing to show up. This is where suddenly the best idea hit the Chi-Chi captains. They decided to run for it. Fully breaking formation, they turned and began to try and jump away. By that, they tried, as the arriving human ships didn't speak, didn't send out anything. They just began to shoot as though there's some sort of evil creation in black armor that just came in and started annihilating the entire fleet. Disabled enemy ships, however, were not splashed. Yet the ships that were still able to maneuver are begging for mercy as they run. After looking at the hulks of their sister ships, humanity realized that on this day, mercy would be a very rare commodity to find. As the last of the few enemy that are able to escape leave via FTL, it's time to salvage. Salvage and rescue. Adhering to protocol, everybody that deals with this new enemy must remain in their suits and never ever speak any human language in front of them. Given the size of the invasion force, there was only a few prisoners actually taken. Very few. Only about 6% is what anybody can figure. And these few prisoners were actually surprised at the amount of care that they received. They immediately received medical care, food and drinks, clean cells to stay in with fresh linens already on the bed. The shower stalls, however, took them by surprise, but there were instructions left for them on how to use the shower to clean themselves up. Yet the only thing that truly amazed them above everything else was the lack of chains and collars. As fresh clothing is being passed out to them, Joe actually made a point to put on his suit, walk down, and look into the cells to stare at these creatures. He wasn't sure if his video was malfunctioning or anything, but he just wanted to make sure and double check with his own eyes. As his father always tells him, it never hurts to double check, especially since he had no idea if he realized what he was looking at. As it turned out, the problem was not the cameras. It is the human perception. Each of these beings is bipedal, humanoid in scale and appearance, a type of pale green, but standing only slightly taller than the crew species as they all stood there and looked at Joe. In his armor, he must have looked like a robot. He just stood there as he began to take notice on how they move. As it turns out, this is one of the only ways to actually tell the males from the females, as these pointy-eared space elves, I guess you could say, with their dark green hair that seemed to be cut shoulder length for the males, but left very long and stretched down for the females. Though through human eyes, it's difficult to tell what he's looking at. Once all is settled and they figure out who is who and what is what, the males and females are immediately separated. This was the moment, especially the females, believed that some sort of creature would arrive to take advantage of them, and they all seemed to shake. They all braced themselves for a moment that would never come. Aki and Melfina became absolutely instrumental in information gathering at this point, and also dispensing the Chi-Chi cipher so everybody could figure out what the hell they were saying. Now the suits will automatically translate. Yet there was still some laughter when the humans realized that that was the actual pronunciation of the species name. Of course, it doesn't help that both male and female have clearly defined memories. After the snickering calmed down, the question is, what the hell do we do with the prisoners now? But the answer was decidedly simple. When looking into the Chi-Chi records, they actually come from a paradise world that is so similar to the Foxy homeworld of Zoro 2, it's almost freaky. With a suitable planet chosen, 2 of the terraforming ships are sent and begin the long and arduous process. Placing the Chi-Chi on that world will guarantee security and eventually could lead to a new ally, but that's something time will tell. Those that had lost loved ones in the battle, well, they wanted blood, but they eventually settled for the relocation. The Chi-Chi that survived would be spending decades on the planet, isolated from everyone and everything as the planet slowly becomes alive. Very, very slowly. Plus, when it's over, these ships will be absolutely perfectly ready to terraform Zoro 3, especially since they'll be able to figure out all the finer details of working with this new alien flora and fauna, which will guarantee that when Zoro 3 is terraformed, they don't have any issues. As far as the Wise sector, in particular Wise 4, they would be given complete priority of materials so that they can rebuild their forces. No deals are going to be struck. Though being such a large amount of debris to salvage, it's going to take a lot of time. The only resource that seems to be running out, even though you have no idea how much is left. Bill himself contacted the government of Wise 4 and offered to lend them one of his space docks until they get the debris field all cleaned up. They accepted, of course, as this was actually pro bono. They would have just have to wait for the destroyer that's being produced right now to be finished. After the space dock is cleared and that destroyer is actually given an AI and his new commander, Joe showed up personally to tow it to the Wise system. This will be the first time in almost 2 decades Bill sees his son in person. when Joe walked in, forgetting the handshake. Bill gave his son a huge hug, actually picking him right off the deck. This surprised the hell out of Joe, as Bill rarely ever does this sort of thing. And then as soon as he let him go, he said, "Welcome home, son." Aya was just as happy to see Joe as when she walked into the room, she ran up and jumped into his arms. They talked for a while and eventually spoke of the battle itself. Joe said, "I knew all that practice and training would pay off." He went on a long rant about how he was so proud of all his crewmen and how well they performed. Eventually, as Joe was ranting about all the different things that had happened, his partners actually showed up. They informed everybody that preparations were actually complete. Bill looked them up and down, and Bill was a little put back at the moment because it's getting difficult to actually tell that they're not human. All their upgrades make them talk, walk, act, everything like human. Aside from some accentuated dimensions, it's clear that they could be completely confused as one. As Joe left, Bill and Aya watched his ship jump away. Aya held very tight to the broad and muscular form of Bill. In this moment, no words were needed between the two. But in that moment, Bill looked out and thought to himself, "Yep, it's gonna happen fast." Hello everybody, this is Syntax. Thank you for joining me today on Part 8 of this ongoing series. Now before I go, I need to say that today's winner is Erica Gem. And I also need to send out some giant thank yous to the supporters of this channel, and those will be Prozac and Pancakes, Sir, Brian Kemp, SS Demon, MTF Guard, Douglas Scarborough, Erica Gem, Joseph Blosh, and Guardian Sage. Thank you all so much for supporting the channel. Everybody else, I'll see you on the next one. This is Syntax.
Ejecting pilot.